Everyone, welcome to the Aberdeenshire Licensing Board. It is Wednesday the 13th of October, so a warm welcome to you all, and also to the new members of staff we have, which our names will be read out later. A very warm welcome to you as well. Please note that the board meeting is being recorded, and it will be published online for a public viewing after the meeting. Can members activate their cameras where possible to enable you to join by video? And can all attendees please mute their microphones when not speaking? And please do not come in during any items unless I invite you to do so. Can I confirm that all members have been able to access the papers for today's meeting in advance? I take it silence means yes. If members wish to speak on any point, please notify me by instant message function in the Skype meeting invite, or if you have dialed into the meeting, indicate by stating your name and then the item you wish to speak on, and I will bring you in at an appropriate time. If any members lose connection or have technical issues during the meeting, please alert the Deputy Clerk by Skype instant message, if possible. Support will be available from Tiago Alves from the ICT officer during the meeting if required. Just to announce before we go into agenda proper, that item 7.2 has been deferred until December board meeting so that Sergeant Flett can speak to this report. So with that, we go to item 1. That's the subject, and apologies. I'll hand over to Deputy Clerk Jill Joss. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just take this, Edrin. If you can please confirm you're present when your name is read out. Mr. Peter Argyle?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Mr. Stephen Calder?
Good morning. I'm here. Thank you.
Mrs. Marion Ewanson?
Present.
Mr. Alistair Forsyth?
Present.
Ms. Victoria Harper?
Present.
Mr. Jeff Hutchison?
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Glenn Reynolds?
Good morning, I'm present.
Mrs. Anne Sterling?
Present.
Mr. Brian Topping?
Here.
Mr. Lee Wilson? Mr. Lee Wilson? I'll come back to Mr. Wilson at the end and see if he's present. I have apologies from Keith Simpson, Senior Licensing Standard Officer. Lisa Godini?
Good morning, I'm here, thank you.
Sarah Ward?
Good morning, I'm here too, thank you.
I have apologies from Sergeant Jill Flett from Police Scotland. Lauren Cowie?
Good morning, I'm here, thank you.
I have apologies from Fiona Stewart. And I can also advise in attendance today we have Lindsay Kimmett, who's a new solicitor in our team, and we also have Lindsay Fraser, who is a trainee solicitor in our team, and the admin assistant today is Delcia Borland. I'll just come back to see if Mr. Lee Wilson's present. No. Okay, we'll try and get him brought into the meeting. Thank you.
That's fine. I think he's maybe still in the other Skype meeting that we've left. But anyway, thank you very much for that. And once again, a warm welcome to our new members of staff. Hopefully you'll enjoy your work with the board. Item number 2 then is declaration of members' interest. Can members please state if you have any interest to declare? And if you have, please clarify the item number, the nature of the declaration, and whether or not you will be leaving the meeting. Is there any to declare? I take silence means no, so move on to item 3, resolutions of equalities. Do we agree the resolution of equalities?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Move on to item 4. That's to approve the meetings of the previous meeting. The minute for approval, it's a correct record. Would anyone like to move that it's correct? Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
I don't know if that's Lee Wilson or it's Pavarotti that's joined us, but thank you very much indeed. So we're all agreed that the minutes are correct. So thank you very much for that. So we'll move swiftly on to
Convener, sorry.
Yes.
Jill Joss, if we can just perhaps go back, since that's Councillor Wilson now joined us, and check that he hasn't got any declarations
Yes.
of interest, and also check
You've no-
the qualities.
You've no declarations of interest, have you?
No declarations, no.
Thank you very much. Did you enjoy yourself being in that meeting on your own?
Indeed.
Indeed. Okay. Right. So you're quite happy with the minutes as well.
Agreed.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
also,
Okay.
sorry, Convener, I'm also just to confirm he's happy to agree the qualities.
You're
resolution.
happy to agree the qualities as well?
Agreed.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Jill. Right, item 5, application of provisional premises licence non-contentious. Right, we've only got one. It's the Co-op in Strawberry Field, Elric, West Hill. I'll hand over to Jill, please.
Thank you very much. Members may recall this application was deferred at the meeting of the board on the 23rd of June due to outstanding issues, and matters are now all resolved. This application is for a provisional licence for a convenience store. The hours are to be off sales only Mondays to Sundays. A representation was received from the licensing standard officer, who was of the view that the proposed end of aisle display did not comply with board policy, and the LSO also recommended local conditions. The applicant submitted a revised layout plan to address the concerns regarding the end of aisle display, and that part of the representation was withdrawn, and all recommended conditions have been agreed by the applicant. There's no other matters outstanding, and I would ask the board that I'd advise the board, that I'd recommend that licence is granted subject to the recommended conditions as stated in the report. Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Deputy Clerk. Can I ask, first of all, if there's any questions? If not, we're happy to agree with the conditions.
Agreed.
That is it. Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So move on to item 6, applications for major variations non-contentious. And we'll take each one in turn. Again, I'll hand over to our Deputy Clerk, Jill. And the first one is Peterhead Motors Limited.
Thank you very much. I'd point out that there was a slight error in that the address is missing from the report for this premises, and I can confirm the address for Peterhead Motors is South Road, Peterhead, AB 422XX. So this is a major variation application. The applicant is seeking to change the layout of the counter and he was looking to add an alcoholic slush machine and also increase the alcohol capacity to 33.65 metres squared. Members will note from the report the proposal to add an alcoholic slush machine has been withdrawn. That was following an objection from the licensing standard officer, and there were no other objections or representations to the application. I therefore recommend that the licence is granted subject to the recommended conditions as stated in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I ask, first of all, if there's any questions on this item? If not, are we happy to agree as recommended?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. The second one is the Berlogie Inn in Skene. Over to you again, Deputy Clerk.
Thank you very much. This application is to include outdoor drinking facilities, a patio and a beer garden, and include these onto the layout plan, and also to vary the times for children and young persons to allow unaccompanied entry to the premises until 10 o'clock for children and young persons aged 15 to 17. Previously it was until 8 o'clock. Vary access to the premises to include access to the outdoor drinking areas and the parts of the premises. There were representations from the police which were addressed by including conditions, and the licensing standard officer also requested conditions to be attached. The applicant is agreed to all these conditions as stated in the report, and I would recommend that the licence is granted subject to the recommended conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Clerk. Can I ask, first of all, if there's any questions or queries on this item? If not, we're happy to agree with the recommendations.
Agreed.
That's agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. The next one is item 3. On item 6 is Duff House Royal Golf Club in Banff. Over once again to Deputy Clerk, please.
Thank you very much. This application seeks to add an outdoor drinking area as an activity and onto the layout plan, increase the capacity due to the outdoor drinking area, and amend the off-season catering hours. There were representations from Police Scotland and the licensing standard officer who requested that conditions are attached to the licence, and the licensing standard officer also asked for clarification on children and young persons' access in the outside area on the layout plan and requested an updated matrix of activities on the plan to reflect the use of each part of the premises. She also requested an updated licensing objectives risk assessment confirming how the premises, including the outside area, will comply with the 5 licensing objectives. The planning service had a comment which was intimated to the applicant just to advise that if a proposed wall or fence is to be erected and exceeds 1 metre, then that would require planning permission. And the applicant addressed all the representations which were submitted an amended layout plan, an operating plan and risk assessment, all of which were acceptable to the licensing standard officer, and the applicant also agreed to all of the conditions. I therefore recommend that the licence is granted subject to the recommended conditions as stated in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Clerk. Can I ask once again, is there any questions or queries on this item? If not, are we happy to agree as recommended with the conditions attached?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. The next one, item 4, Banff Springs Hotel, I believe that's been withdrawn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We seek to withdraw this application and we would hope that matters can be resolved and it will come back to the board in December. Thank you.
In December. Thank you. So move on to item 5 on this item is the Harbour Lights. Over to you, Deputy Clerk, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'd apologise again that the address appears to have been missing from the report for this premises. So I would confirm that the address is 122 to 124 Longgate, Peterhead, AB4221JU. This application was seeking addition of activities to include bar meals during core licensed hours only, and also to change the layout to include a kitchenette within the lounge bar on the ground floor of the premises. The LSO requested that the matrix of activities attached to the layout plan is to be updated to reflect the areas of the premises that the activity will take place, and also recommended local conditions. Building standards also made some comments. No completion certificate was in place and the capacity was also to be reduced slightly. Matters now been resolved, the completion certificates in place, and the conditions have been agreed, and I therefore recommend that the licence is granted subject to the recommended conditions as stated in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Clerk. Any questions or queries on this particular application? If not, we're happy to agree.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Number 6 on this item is the Latham Arms in Port Lethen. Again, over to you, Deputy Clerk, please.
Thank you, Convener. This application is to advance the commencement hour for on sales of alcohol on Sunday to 11 o'clock, and also advance the hours for the beer garden on a Sunday for 11 o'clock, and also to extend the current outdoor drinking area. The police made a representation recommending conditions which have been accepted, and environmental health made a comment which was related to the applicant. The applicant has accepted the recommended conditions and also updated the operating plan to break down the capacity and insert details of the designated premises manager, which were missing from the original application. There is to be one change to the conditions stated in the report, in that condition 31 is to have a terminal hour of 9 p.m. for the beer garden rather than 10 p.m. as stated, and this is because the beer garden has a specific terminal hour stated in the current licence of 9 p.m. and this variation makes no change to that time. This has been brought to the attention of the applicant, who understands and has agreed this amended condition. I would therefore recommend that the licence is granted subject to the recommended conditions as stated in the report, and also subject to the amendment that local condition 1 is to have a terminal hour of 9 p.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Clerk. That was very clear and precise. Can I ask, first of all, if there's any questions or queries on this application? If not, are we happy to agree subject to the conditions? Okay, a silence means agreement. Thank you. And number 7, the last one in this particular item, is the Kellogg Bank Country Emporium in Inch. Again, over to you, Deputy Clerk, please.
Thank you very much. This application is looking to add an outdoor seated patio area and also increase the off-sales capacity with the premises. Police Scotland and the LSO recommended conditions in their representations on this application, and members will note from the report that the response was to be confirmed at the board meeting, and I'm pleased to advise that they have accepted the conditions proposed. I'm also pleased to advise that the certificate of compliance has been received. Similarly to the last application, I would advise that there's to be one change to the conditions stated in the report, in that condition 31 is to have a terminal hour of 5 p.m. rather than 10 p.m. as stated. And this is because the operating hours of the premises are only until 5 p.m. and the variation makes no change to that time for the outdoor area. Again, this was brought to the attention of the applicant, who understands and agrees with the local condition as amended. I therefore recommend that the licence is granted subject to the recommended conditions as stated in the report, subject to the amendment that local condition 31 is to have a terminal hour of 5 p.m. rather than 10 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Again, is there any questions or queries on this particular application? I think silence meaning that you're quite happy. So we're happy to agree with the conditions attached?
Yeah, good.
As agreed. Thank you very much, board members. Now move on to item 7.1. That's the Functions and Finance Report. And for this we have Lauren Cowie. Lauren, over to you, please.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, board members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this annual Functions and Finance Report for the last financial year to you. The report before you fulfils the board's statutory obligations in terms of Air Weapons and Licensing Scotland Act 2015 and the amendments to the Licensing Scotland Act 2005. This is the 4th year of gathering statistics in this manner, and although the presentation has slightly changed this year, previous reports have shown the breakdown between North, Central and South Board areas. However, given the restructure of the board, previous year's figures have been brought together as a total, only to show how the new board statistics compare with combined statistics of the past, and that will help to give us the overall licensing position for Aberdeenshire. I've also realised that my formatting of the contents page hasn't quite survived the conversion to the agenda, but I will ensure that this is done properly before it's published on the website and submitted to the Scottish Government. What a year last year was. Notwithstanding the structural change made to the board itself, the impact of the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic ensured that it was a year that won't be easily forgotten. The figures in the report give an indication of the impact that COVID-19 has had on the licensed trade, but it can't be taken as being indicative of a longer-term trend in our statistics. They are a reflection of the restrictions imposed on both the licensed trade and wider society during 2020 and 2021. The report also captures the additional work of the team and how they have adapted over the course of the last year. Focusing on the licensing standards officers particularly, they've taken on additional responsibilities in terms of COVID compliance in addition to their usual duties. And the licensing team, both administration staff and solicitors, have totally changed how they work, moving from paper and office-based working to home, mainly electronic working. The teams have shown remarkable resilience, and I, for one, would really like to take this opportunity to express how proud and delighted I am of them and of what they've achieved in really difficult circumstances over the last year, and I felt that it was really important that that was reflected in the annual report. The report sets out the statistical information that's required by the Act, and the officers' thoughts on the data are also presented within it. The information will provide invaluable when reviewing the licensing policy statement within 18 months of the next election next year, and any trends that are emerging will help to guide that policy review. As noted by the board at previous meetings, there's been an increase in the number of off-sales only premises, which isn't really a surprise given the impact of restrictions on the on-sales trade in the last year. One of the biggest impacts can be seen in the volume of occasional licences received in the last year. only 43% of the previous year's total was received. Some of these that were received will be for outdoor spaces which were not previously licensed, and during the course of the easing of restrictions. And due to the pace of change to what wasn't permitted and when, and to assist the trade as much as possible, and only due to the drop in the other application types, for example, the severe decrease in public entertainment, fun fairs, etc., and the work that had been done before in terms of installing a new licensing system and developing online forms, the team were able to process applications, obviously with the cooperation of our statutory partners in Police Scotland and the Licence and Standards Officers, in 14 days rather than the usual 6 to 8 weeks. So that was done so that we could support the trade as much as we possibly could, but this is not sustainable long term. And now that the volume of applications has now returned to pre-pandemic levels, we are now back to accepting applications 28 days in advance. The other statistic to highlight is that we've lost 29 premises in the course of the last year. Not all of this will be due to the pandemic, however, I would think that most would be as a direct consequence of it, although we don't have any information from the licence holders themselves as to why they had particularly given up their licence. The report sets out the achievements of the board, and I'm sure that the board, as well as the deputy clerks, will really closely monitor the volume of applications and reviews that are received in the next few years, which will help to be an indication of the recovery of the licence trade from the pandemic and also the finances of the board too. It's hoped that we'll show a good recovery from the pandemic. However, the statistics that we show in this report are only part of a wider picture. The report reflects on the goals for moving forward, and this is contained within section 5 of the report. The focus for officers continues to be on upholding the licensing objectives and enhancing our digital offering, whilst also supporting those suffering from digital exclusion. Work will also be undertaken to prepare for a new board following the election, and then the focus will shift to review of the policies. I commend the annual report to you for approval and would be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Just before I open up, I think on behalf of the board, I'm sure they would agree, as we have done in the past, we'd like to say a big and a huge thank you and congratulations to all the staff involved, the LSOs, the legal team, all your backup team. Obviously, Police Scotland have a part to play. I think really with the pandemic, I think everyone has done, I know even as a board, we've always been very supportive of the difficult times that the licensing trade has faced, and have tried do all that we can to support them. And I know as raised at a previous meeting, the number of occasional licenses that were dealt with in very quick time, was very helpful to those places. I'm sure most of us, when we're out and about, will actually see, the outside spaces, which I think has really helped keep some of the businesses afloat. We certainly wish the trade well. As I say, they have had very difficult times, but obviously being in a worldwide pandemic, I think health is obviously vitally important. But once again, if you please maybe minute the thanks, I'm sure, of the entire board, and make sure that's passed on through our various partners and especially our own staff. So with that, I'll open it up. Anyone like to indicate any questions? A very good report as well, Lauren, so thank you for that. Very informative and very detailed, so thank you. Ask the Deputy Convener, Ms. Ewanson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just more or less to again commend the licensing staff on their just complete flexibility and how they've been able to work in different circumstances and doing a different job, really, having to deal with all these occasional licenses. I just want to focus a bit on the report itself and maybe point out the trends and comments lines as you go through the report. I think they're worth attention because they kind of just sum up each stage of the way in the report, and I quite like the presentation. But thank Lauren for all her work in pulling the report together, and again just commend the staff for the work they've done this last year and a half, because it can't have been easy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ewanson. Any other comments? I think we're all thinking the same thing, although we're not saying it basically to say to Lauren, a huge thank you to you for pulling this together. Very detailed, very comprehensive. And again, please maybe add to the recommendations the board's appreciation and thanks to all the staff working in difficult conditions with the pandemic, most of them working from home, I would imagine. So are you happy now, board members? We'll look at the recommendations. There's 2.1, 2.2, and we're also adding a 2.3, which is to thank all our staff and members. Mr. Argyle?
Yes, thank you. I just wonder whether we could add the trade into that, because the fact that so many of them have survived in these circumstances is, in part, I will absolutely agree, in no small part down to the way that our services responded to the challenge, but the way they've responded as well. I do think we need to acknowledge that as part of our comment, maybe a separate recommendation, but it is astonishing the way that they have worked so hard during this past 18 months of the pandemic. I do think we need to acknowledge that. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Argyle. I think that would be fine. We could add that if everyone's agreed into the recommendations, because I think, as you say, their resilience, them trying to do things differently, and training their staff, and all the various things that goes with it, just to trying to keep themselves afloat. And for those businesses, some have closed probably for different reasons, but any that have closed, especially those due to COVID, we certainly, our sympathies are with them. I know it's a lot of businesses, including the licensing trade, have struggled. So are we all happy, if there's no other comments, to agree recommendation 2.1, 2.2, with the addition of the thanking the staff and partners, and also thanking the trade itself for the resilience and working, with us to get through this. So we're quite happy with that?
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Happy with that, Lauren?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for all your comments. Now, the next one, item 7.2, as you know, the Chief Constable's Licence Report will be coming up to the December meeting. So we'll move on to item 7.2, that's the COVID recovery, a consultation on public health. And I'll ask the Deputy Clerk, Jill, if you'd like to speak to your report, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Convener. The Scottish Government has published a consultation document and are seeking views by the 9th of November on which legislative provisions that were put in place in response to the COVID pandemic should remain permanent. And one aspect of this is in relation to the alcohol licensing provisions which were made in Schedule 5 of the Coronavirus Scotland Act 2020 and relate to the holding of licensing board hearings. The Coronavirus Act amended paragraph 12.2 of Schedule 1 to the 2005 Act to state that meetings for a licensing board must be held in public unless the board determines that a meeting cannot be held in public for a reason relating to coronavirus. These provisions expired for licensing board meetings on the 30th of September, and recommendations to have the provisions extended to March were defeated. This means that currently the 2005 Act provisions reverted to the positions set out in 4.1 of this report on the 1st of October 2021. The proposals stated within the report would enable licensing boards to make discretionary decisions as to whether it would be appropriate for a hearing to be held remotely, and they state that it may still be in some cases an in-person hearing is more suitable in the circumstances, and it would be intended for licensing boards to assess when remote hearings should be used, subject to them weighing up all relevant factors which may arise in any given situation. The Scottish Government takes the view that ensuring the availability of remote hearings will allow licensing boards to consider how best to conduct their business and continue to provide flexibility that will benefit and assist all users of the licensing system as they begin to recover from the adverse impact of the pandemic. The board is being asked to consider the extract P1 from the consultation paper within Appendix 1 of this report, and also being asked to consider question 5 of the consultation paper within Appendix 2 of this report on page 113, and which of the 5 statements they agree with. And we're also happy to put back any further comments that the board may have, and the board's response will contribute to Aberdeenshire Council's overall response to this consultation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Deputy Clerk. Can I ask for any comments or suggestions or proposals? Mr. Argyle, you'd like to come in, please? Thank you.
Yeah, looking at question 5, which I think is the key one really for us, and whether we should be empowered, if you like, to continue to meet remotely. I think there's no doubt we should, and it makes perfect sense to my mind that should be a permanent arrangement. It should be left to the discretion of licensing boards to decide whether a meeting is held publicly in person or publicly remotely, because I don't see there's a difference. And I think that is something that, if we're going to put a response back to Scottish Government, it should be to clarify that legal aspect, that a meeting that's held remotely but live streamed, open to anyone to join, is a public meeting, and that would make life a lot more straightforward. Once the pandemic eases, if the pandemic eases, if we ever come out the other end, I have no doubt there will be times where there are agendas that are so short and so non-controversial that there's no requirement for us to actually meet in person. There'll be other ones where there are complex hearings where it would probably be better to meet in person if the pandemic situation allowed. But we need to have that flexibility. And if we have that flexibility, I see no purpose in extending it for a short period. It needs to be extended permanently, in my view. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? I would certainly agree with those comments, especially when you're looking at the licensing trade themselves, someone having to maybe travel into where we agreed the meetings would be initially at Bootle House, perhaps to sit around for an hour or 2 hours and then end up when their application comes in, they might be there for 10 minutes. So I think that way, but as you also say that, if the pandemic eases up and we feel that it's appropriate, a bit like the council's doing, having the hybrid meetings where, we could have a meeting if we wish, but I think we've been quite successful, as I say, in doing the meetings the way we are through Skype. So anyway, we've got Miss Ewanson, please. Would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you. It's just, again, looking at question 5, which is on page 113 of our papers. I think, for me, it has to be that first answer there. I think the provisions for topic P1 should be extended beyond March 2022 and made permanent. And it's not to say that we're going to meet remotely forevermore, but it just means we retain that option if necessary. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't see any other things. So I think for the recommendations, so we're happy to agree the comments made by Mr. Argyle, Peter Argyle, that if we feel we want to do them remotely, it should still be considered an official and proper meeting. But again, the other thing just to touch on is the delegation. I think it's slightly different from the licensing committee. Being the licensing board, are we quite happy that the delegation that we have in place for the licensing board just be the status quo as far as that's concerned?
Agreed.
People be happy with that. Is there any other comments, or can I ask, Jill, is there anything else you want us to agree apart from what's on the agenda there under the recommendations 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4?
Thank you very much. No, I think it's coming across that the board would wish that we put forward that these provisions, they agree with the provisions. There should be the option, should be up to the board's discretion whether they have the meet remotely or in person, and it'd be useful for that to be clarified. And they think that it should be made. These should be made permanent. And we can also put forward comments, that some meetings, if it's a straightforward meeting, it'd be useful for the board to have the option as to how this is held. And I guess we could also maybe put forward the comment about, the possibility of also hybrid meetings. So you could have some in person and some remote as well. And put forward that, Aberdeenshire Council, we've been successfully doing these meetings all throughout the pandemic, and I think the report mentions the North Board. They were one of the first, to ever hold one of these hearings, which was really good. So yeah, I'm happy to put forward, I think, statement 1 and put forward the comments that have been made. And also,
That's
yeah,
great.
I guess in relation to, I think, Councillor Topping, you made a comment regarding travel, because obviously Aberdeenshire is such a large area. It would be useful from that aspect.
Yeah, the geographical, and
Yeah.
also the bit about the scheme delegation. We're happy to, it remains as is. So we're all happy to agree that. No further comments. So if that's agreed, thank you very much, everyone, and to Deputy Clerk for your presentation. So now move on to the last item, item 8, date of the next meeting, which is the 15th of December. So can I thank each and every one of you for your input today, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. So that is now the meeting officially closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.